Hello everyone and welcome back to AP Bio with AP Playground. Today we're covering topic 8.4, Effects of Density on Populations. In 8.3 we discussed population growth with an abundance of resources. And today we're going to be discussing the reality of the situation in which exponential growth cannot occur, and we'll be looking at logistical growth. And our suggested skills, statistical tests and data analysis. 5A, perform mathematical calculations, including mathematical equations in the curriculum, means, rates, ratios, percentages, and percent changes. So, when we talked about exponential population growth, we discussed unlimited population growth. Resources are abundant, and this is not possible for a long time. So within reality, within actual environments, there is a chance that exponential growth can occur for a finite amount of time. Resources are going to be abundant until the environment can no longer sustain the size of the population that has grown. And so when we talk about this maximum size of the population, we're looking at carrying capacity, which is the maximum population size that a certain environment can support at a particular time. And when we incorporate carrying capacity into our population growth equation, we're looking at logistic population growth, which states that the rate of growth is going to decline as we reach the carrying capacity, as resources begin to dwindle and the population cannot grow because the environment can no longer support it. And this is going to affect reproduction and life history, which is when an organism reproduces, how many offspring does it have for each reproductive cycle, and how many times is this going to occur. And so animals that live in environments where resources are abundant are going to be able to reproduce more, have more offspring for reproduction compared to animals that perhaps reproduce once per lifetime. And so when we look at our equation of logistical growth, we see again our change in population size, dn, and our change in time, dt. So we're looking at the change in population size over time, and this part of the equation is same to exponential growth. We're looking at our growth rate, we're looking at our initial population size, but now we also have to factor in k, carrying capacity. And so logistic growth is also going to include carrying capacity minus current population size divided by our carrying capacity. So for instance, if our growth rate was 1, our population size initially was 1,200, and our carrying capacity, our K, is 1,500. That's the maximum population size that this environment can support. We can find the population growth for one generation. So dn over dt is going to equal to 1 times 1,200 times 1,500 minus 1,200 makes 300 over 1,200. And that, when you do all the math down, is going to get you a positive 240 individuals. So we have a growth of 240 individuals in the population over a generation. And just over here, you can see, you can compare our J, exponential growth, and our S, logistic growth. Exponential growth is abundant and multiplication keeps happening, whereas within logistic growth, over time, we're reaching carrying capacity, and exponential growth has maybe started to occur here, but then it's going to slow down because carrying capacity is being reached. So what are these limits to growth? These things in the environment that prevent exponential growth from occurring. And so when we look at limits to growth, there are both density and density independent factors. So density dependent factors say that when there is a higher population density, meaning individuals per unit of area, so in a space, if there's a higher amount of individuals in that space, then the death rate is going to increase and the birth rate is going to decrease. Because when you are living in a more dense area, there's going to be competition for resources such as food and space. There's a finite amount of space and food in an area, and as more individuals take up space in that area, there's going to become less space, less food. There's going to be less territory, such as for nesting for different organisms. There's going to be an easier transmission of disease because organisms are more closely clumped together. And also we have predation. It's much easier to find prey if all of these individuals are in one area. And so when the population gets too high for the environment to support it, these factors will cause the population to shrink by either increasing the number of deaths or decreasing the amount of births that can happen due to not enough resources being there. So over here we can see predation. Here we see too many individuals in one area, and as a result there's not going to be enough resources for each of them. Here we see competition for potentially a mate, for potentially space, for food. However, there are also density-independent factors, so they're going to change the death rate regardless of a change in the population density. No matter how large or small the population is, these can severely affect the growth of the population. And these include natural disasters, such as this forest fire. It's going to burn down the habitat, and no matter if this habitat could support an infinite amount of individuals, if the forest fire burns down 90% of it, then of course population growth will be limited, because now there is not going to be the resources necessary to support a large population, and we're also looking at death rates increasing because some individuals of the population were not able to make it out of the forest fire. We also see human involvement that removes habitats as well, such as deforestation and urbanization. So when we look at effects of populations, we got to think about logistic growth. Growth approaching the carrying capacity, which is the maximum size of the population that an environment can handle. And there is this carrying capacity due to density-dependent and density-independent limiting factors that are based on either how large the population is, or not based on how large the population is, but will stop growth regardless.